Hello, Ken. How are you this evening?
I am fine, Daniel. How about yourself?
I'm doing excellent. Tonight, we have a real treat for you because we are talking about retreats. And that's not like running away from the other army, it's something totally different. Ken, what is this all about?
Well, Dan, this is all about taking the time to reflect and taking the time to get to know the people that you work with better. But it's also about taking the time to get to know yourself better because retreats, we often talk about them in the context of companies, sometimes church groups, those kinds of things. So we talk about group retreats. It's also really beneficial to take some time out to do retreats on different levels, like family retreats, couples retreats, and individual retreats. I just finished leading one for a company this past week. We spent Sunday through Thursday together. We kind of sandwiched the work in between. So Tuesday and Wednesday were heavy work days, 8 a.m. to almost 5 p.m. at night, long sessions. But on Sunday evening and Monday, and then on Thursday to wrap things up, it was just time together. It was just time away from phones, away from computers, time to be with each other. All of the shareholders' spouses were there, almost all of them. And so they had a chance to get to know each other as well. And there is something so powerful that comes out of that kind of bond that gets formed. I always think about a retreat as you step away from the noise. You have a chance to quiet your mind. You have a chance to talk about what matters most. You have an opportunity to actually plan for what's going to happen next. And then when you step back into the fray, maybe it's not quite as off putting. Maybe it's not quite as noisy because you're stepping back in with this team that's come together around a common purpose and that it truly has each other's backs as they step back into what's going on. Last point, and then I'll turn it over to you, is that sometimes during the course of a year, we can get really siloed. Our heads can just be down. There's an expression I hear a lot in companies: heads down. It's busy. It's all hands on deck and heads down. And while that's necessary sometimes, heads up is also really important. And making sure that we look around outside of the silo that we're in, outside of the team that we're in, and that we look at our team members and we look beyond that too, company wide, and have a chance to bond with each other and step back in a more unified way.
I met this fine older couple today. They're about the age of my parents, and they gave me this brochure. This is literally today. It's for Marriage Encounter, and I think it's Catholic. I know it's Catholic, but also might just be Christian. But it is not marriage preparation, but literally married couples to go on a retreat to, I guess, spend some time, maybe away from the kids, right? Maybe away from the daily activities of their life, and to learn more about each other and their relationship and to delve deeper into that. And we got on this topic because I was remembering that when I was very young, my parents used to run some of these retreats for, like married couples called Marriage Encounter. So I thought that's really interesting. And my dad, who is very Catholic, he encourages us, and in fact, will cover the cost if we go on an annual retreat every year. He always says, go on a retreat, go on a retreat. So clearly he sees the value in doing that. Now this is a faith-based retreat, and there's, like we said, or you said at the beginning, there's all different types. But no, I think if you pick any category of life, the best approach to take is full immersion, meaning get away from the other things that can distract you and go all in on whatever the topic of this thing is, right? So whether that's something about your faith, whether it's something about your marriage, whether that's something about some skill or a business, but go all in, immerse yourself and spend the time, because just as my dad sees enough value in it that he was willing to cover the cost for myself or my siblings, um, take the time, because a retreat can be a powerful break from what your everyday activities are.
They were called Cursillo before they were called Marriage Encounter, something like that. I'm thinking back to the early days of those kinds of things developing in churches. I think one of the most fascinating things that I discovered leading this retreat this past week was there's something magical that happens when you just allow for a free flow of conversation. You introduce a topic and you have an opportunity just to allow people to kind of wander with it. There was no time constraint of like, well, we got to finish this in 15 minutes because I've got another meeting. There was an opportunity to take a broad topic, whatever it happened to be. You know, one of them was around um, building high functioning teams, and to talk about the breakdowns that happen and the communications that happen. And people had a chance to examine themselves and take a look at where they could do better as well. I think the the piece that was so meaningful was just to see the self-discovery that happened in the context of those conversations, that people actually were reflective enough and self-aware enough to take a look at places where they could get better. And those conversations carried over into lunch, they carried over into the breaks, they even carried over into dinner, and sometimes afterwards. I know we talk about the importance of like time management and scheduling things and being efficient and being effective. And I think we're far more efficient and effective if we take the time out to actually pause and reflect and give our minds an opportunity to come to rest. Because without that, we're just going to burn out. And a retreat like this, your point, Dan, about going all in. This was, 4 hours away from the home office. People had to make a drive to get there. We stayed at the resort hotel. Sometimes people do retreats locally. Those can be effective, but there's something great about getting in a different environment so you don't have all of the common clues and cues, and just allowing yourself to soak in what's going on. So on a corporate level, if you're not doing this on a regular basis, at least annually with your leadership team, man, it's time to get something on the books and plan something where you get away from the office and you can't easily get back. Preferably a place where there's kind of lousy cell phone coverage, just as an added bonus.
Toe the company line or toe the party line. Uh, what made me think of that was one of the first steps that I take in the process of coaching somebody is to look yourself in the mirror. Like, you don't have to be naked, but it's the metaphor of like being completely like all the stuff that you cover up or hold inside, like let it all out, like be completely vulnerable, see yourself with no facade, no BS. And I think a retreat can truly, I like the word reflection, can give you a chance to really reflect, like look yourself in the mirror, whether that's you as an individual or your relationship, like look at it without all this BS around it, right? If it's your company or the little group that you're in, like look at it and have a chance to reflect by removing all the stuff that stands in the way. There's a common phrase in consulting. They say, you need time to work on your business because you're always working in your business. So I think a retreat is a great chance to work on whatever the topic is, right? Like on yourself, on your relationship, on the business, on the group, versus being involved inside the day to day, because that gets like into the way things have always been done. And I think nobody feels comfortable questioning it, because the moment you pause to reflect, things aren't getting done. So this chance to get away from being inside of it, get outside of it, right? To be able to then reflect and go, what's not working? Because when we're back in, we need to have already figured out where we need to make, if you need to make adjustments or tweaks. um, there is a saying, it's part of our saying. I won't go through the whole part of it, but the last step in this process that I use in coaching is it's an acronym, and the A stands for adjust. And one of my coaching clients called me out and he said, "Yeah, but do you always have to adjust?" And I said, "No, but adjust uh, is just the word I chose. Adjust can be a reinforcement, right? So sometimes in reflecting, it reinforces that, oh, this is working. Like this thing is actually working. So do you need to adjust, like make a change? No, you can maybe adjust your mindset about something. Maybe it reinforced in you, like, oh, let's do more of that. That's really working. Joe Rogan is one of my favorite podcasters. He's probably one of the most popular from a viewer perspective or listener perspective podcast. And one of the things that a lot of people are copying now, and I think it works really well, is long form podcasts. So when he brings in people for interviews, he will literally probably on average spend 2+ hours and many times 3 hours. Many people be like, that is overkill. That's crazy. But the point of him doing that is you get away from what I started with, the party line, right? Like this PR spin. So if you were a politician or you're a business person or whatever your thing is we're so used to people asking us questions and we just have to like toe the line, like answer, this is the way it is. And it doesn't give you any time in a 1 minute or 10-minute even interview to reflect, to think about like, what do I really think? Does that even make sense to me? So the fact that they have in that interview process long form gives a chance to like dive deeper, like reflect more, like get past surface level, like the lines that we've all said, this is just the way it is. This is how we do things. This is the way it has to be. This is the way it should be. And it gives a chance to do it more. So in a retreat, like Ken said, whether that's a half day, a full day, a weekend, or a week, whatever it is, it truly gives you that time for reflection to get away from this surface level party line and to start to dig deeper and go, yeah, but what's behind all of that? So by the time you get back inside, you've hopefully made the right adjustments to be even better.
I think the point you made is a great one. I'll relate this to the coaching work that I do. Maybe 90% of the time, the breakthrough comes at minute 55 out of a 60-minute session. We'll start with how are things, what's going on, any particular wins, any challenges you're facing. Things are pretty straightforward usually. And the deeper we dig and the further we go, all of a sudden, by the time we get to the end, something will pop up. And we couldn't have gotten there without the 55 minutes that preceded it. That's sort of the magic of it, is that most people need some amount of time, like you were saying, Dan, to move past whatever it is, the road answers, the party line, the practiced stuff that just comes out because it's like, we got to get through this. We got to move fast because the next thing is coming. But in the context of coaching for that hour, when, whoever you're working with is just alone, it's just the two of you talking back and forth, that you literally see their minds start to come to rest, and you can hear answers become more reflective. And you oftentimes hear them saying, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, I didn't think of it that way, or I'm not sure, I'm going to need to reflect on that. Something happens when you quiet your mind and get away from the top 10 list. I also want to add that two of my closest friends, they're a couple that have been together 25 years. They take individual retreats every year. One of them goes away for about a week, somewhere in December. The other person goes away somewhere in January. They take a week off and they go away just to reflect on the year past, to think about the year ahead, to reset, to do some journaling. They've been doing this every year for the past 25 years. And they're just rock solid as a couple. And I think one of the reasons is because they have the security in themselves and in each other to let the other person go and do this. And when they come back, they always come back richer. They always come back with an insight. They always come back transformed. And they bring that transformation into their relationship. They also take time away together, without a doubt. But there's something that is so striking to me about a couple that's willing to just take that time alone and go away and think. And they get away. I mean, this is like a 5-day trip for each of them that they take to some particular place that's calling to them. And during that time, they're generally speaking not in communication except for a daily check-in. It's like, I'm fine, everything's safe. And then they come back and they're more empowered. And that's one of the things that they've credited in terms of why the relationship is so good and so strong and has lasted so long. So again, I just commend to you the consideration of what it would mean to actually retreat from daily noise in your own life as a couple, and as a business.
You just made me realize that the word retreat might actually mean what I said it didn't mean, which is not retreating from the enemy army, but actually maybe it truly comes from retreating from your daily life, right? Or from the norm. Maybe it's retreating, getting away from, moving away from the norm. I never thought of it that way, but that's great. So in a coaching call this week, one of my clients said to me, focus blocks. And that's a common phrase that's used in many books and talks about like a period of focus, right? And they were talking about one of the ways that they're grading themselves is on the number of focus blocks that they can achieve in a day, right? So kind of understanding your priorities. And in their mind, I think it was 45 minutes or something like that, that they would set a timer and just focus on the one thing for that period of time. So you said it earlier, Ken, I totally agree. I think for any topic that you're going to do a retreat on, it's just as important that you get away from the things that could distract you. Because if you're going to really be all in, you can't invite into this all in things that could take you out, right? Like things that could distract you from it. And this person mentioned to me in their focus blocks that one of the distractions they noticed was the phone vibration, right? Of alerts. And it is what it is. I wasn't going to criticize that this seems so obvious, but I was curious why they didn't just put their phone on do not disturb or bring their phone into another room, right? Like there's many approaches, but I really think a true retreat doesn't have to be formalized. It doesn't have to be a group. It can be you just deciding to take a focus block, right? Like you just say, I'm retreating from daily life and I'm just going to choose whatever period of time and I'm going to put these distractions away and I'm just going to spend the time completely all in on this. And then it gives you a chance. And maybe you give it a time limit, but like Ken said, maybe a time limit puts a constraint that makes you rush or feel stressed when you'd really just want that time to go. But to give yourself time and really just like spend it all on that thing and try to like look at yourself or look at the situation you're focused on and try to just pull one. I love the word, like it's a golden nugget, like that one thing. It's like if I can walk away with one insight, one new lesson learned or new adjustment that I'll make, this would have all been worth it. So I encourage you, even take a mini retreat for yourself, call it a focus block, call it what you want, but do it without anything that's going to pull you away from all in focus just on whatever topic you've decided.
One last comment I'll make about the group retreat this past week. It was a follow-up of a retreat we had done the year before to create a strategic plan for the year going forward. There were 5 strategic imperatives and then multiple goals underneath those strategic imperatives, 77 of them, in fact, in total. 2 of the goals of the strategic imperatives we completed totally. Of the 3 that were remaining, we fully completed about 55% of those, and 45% were in process. There was nothing that hadn't been touched. They didn't even have a realization of how much work they had done. The heavy lift that had gone on in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a pandemic, being faced with like, what's going to happen to the business? They were able to still thrive and to move through it in a way that was like beyond admirable. It was really extraordinary. And I think, Dan, the thing that was just a wake-up call to me is how often we don't take time to reflect on the wins. And a retreat can be that time too. Not just to go within and think about challenges you're facing individually or as a couple or a company, but to actually just take time to stop and appreciate all you've done, everything that you've accomplished, especially now, looking back at the past several months. What a great opportunity just to take stock and to pat yourself on the back, to pat your fellow team members on the back and say, well done. Because oftentimes with wins, again, when we're in the middle of it, it's like, great job. All right, on to the next. The amount of time spent in appreciation, acknowledgement, and celebration is usually pretty minimal. And taking time out for this kind of an annual exercise just gives you time to actually celebrate what you've done so that you can move forward from a position of accomplishment.
Start with a blank slate. And that might sound funny to people, but I think too many people are too prepared, right? They're spending too much time trying to say, what is this all about? And let me like prepare to do it. But I think that keeps you inside. That keeps you inside of what your norm, that keeps you inside of your routine if you're too prepared for something. Like I have this little journal here, and every time I just did it during this, is I keep it as blank pages. And every time I complete something, I take it out of this book. And I was thinking about a whiteboard. The best kind of whiteboards, in my opinion, if you were going to go to a retreat, is a blank whiteboard, right? Like we're going to start, we're going to put stuff up on the whiteboard that's just sitting there. If you were going to use something digital and you have a bunch of browser windows open, maybe either close them or minimize them and open a new browser window where there's no other tabs. It's just, like a blank Google Doc or whatever you use, Microsoft Word. And it's that blank slate for you to just go in, ask yourself the question and really reflect and start from a place of like, let it come out from inside of you versus having to like have filled your head with a bunch of logical stuff. Because I think true reflection is truly that interior looking, right? And so if you don't have anything in front of you and it's blank, you get a chance to really just like, you fill it from within. You get to fill it with stuff that wasn't just because you memorized it or thinking about it. You just get to like react to it and really emotionalize it.
So I'd invite people to do this now, like you've listened to this. Look at a calendar. Get something on there, even if it's just for yourself to like contemplate what else you could be doing with your company or with your family, with your significant other. Get something on there. See if you can mark out just half a day. Shut down. Don't. It's not like don't check email. It's turn it off. Turn off your phone. Give yourself a half a day of just reflection time. If you've got a whiteboard, if you've got a blank piece of paper, notebook, those are your companions, right? And just let your mind take you where it will. Don't be afraid of the I don't know. Don't be afraid of you're sitting there and nothing seems to be coming up. It's okay. It's your mind calming down so that the creative juices can start to flow. But start with something like that. On a company level, if you're not doing anything to actually get away on at least an annual basis, a lot of companies do this more frequently. Some of them do smaller retreats quarterly with a large annual getaway. Some of them do team retreats on a quarterly basis that tend to be a little bit smaller, but just give different parts of the company a chance to have this same experience that normally is reserved for leadership or shareholder or board of director level. Do that. Take the time though to plan it out now. It's not going to get better if you're not doing it. If you already are doing it, incorporate some of the suggestions that we've made here today. Primarily think about how you can leave more space for creative thought to happen. Don't try to structure every minute out. Give yourself big blocks of time with broad topics to discuss and be okay with not knowing, not having the answers, and not wrapping everything up in a neat bow. You can still take notes out of there with steps for moving forward, but you don't have to, and you probably shouldn't end up with everything solved because most things aren't solvable like that. They're going to take a longer period of time. So plan something now. If you already have something going on, look at ways that you can make it broader and look at how you can encourage more free-flowing conversation so that people have a chance to really explore on an interior level what's going on together as a group.
Now it's time for us to retreat from this podcast.